With 60 billion messages sent out daily, people using their phones 1,500 times per week, and more than 500 hours of content being uploaded to YouTube each minute, distractions have become our biggest enemy toward making a positive impact, becoming extraordinary at what we do, and optimizing our mental health. Thankfully, the solution to the problem is actually quite simple. Combine the habits of Zen monks with proven strategies from the best books on how to focus, and turn it into a reproducible, reliable system to implement each time we do work. Exactly what we'll cover in today's video. My name's Sam Rolfe, and the goal of this channel is to help you live a life of more focus, compassion, and wisdom, so consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell to receive updates when I release a new video. So more specifically, today we're going to look at 1. Creating a grounding morning routine and clarify our day. 2. Create a powerful pre-work ritual to put the mind in an optimal state. And 3. Utilize advanced strategies to stay on task to the things that matter. So what I'm proposing today is a system, and when you commit to this system, you'll be ahead of 99% of the people in the world in the way that you use your attention. So without further ado, this is how to focus like a Zen master. 1. Morning rituals. To live like a Zen master and develop unwavering focus, one needs a relentless commitment to self-discipline and self-care. Because if the mind is foggy and undisciplined, how can you expect to have significant outputs with your work? So the goal of this first section, we're essentially setting up our mind to achieve 2 things: become energized and alert, and establish clarity around our day. For a typical Zen monk, this involves waking up at 5:30 in the morning and then following through with a systematic group of routines: meditation, cooking, and cleaning. For me, that's an alarm positioned on the opposite side of the room, so when it goes off, I have to get up out of bed each morning, followed by a drink of water, 1 hour of meditation, and a little bit of light reading. Anything to get the mind primed for the work that is to come. And like Zen monks, we do this with a sense of poise, a sense of grace, knowing that when we fulfill these tasks, it's going to help snowball and really have a positive impact on our workflow throughout the day. But here's perhaps the most important part to our morning ritual. An important principle in Zen is do less. In other words, planning out our days with the most important tasks in mind.
An 80-20 analysis.
This process involves typing out all that's on our mind and putting it all down on paper, no matter what it is. I personally use Evernote, but you can use really any application or journaling system that you want. And then once we've done this, we're going to categorize our work into either deep work or shallow work. Deep work being the tasks that require the most cognitive power, that move the needle along the furthest for us, such as an assignment, a project, or some sort of proposal. And shallow work being the tasks that don't really move the needle along that much for us. So, things like email or doing spreadsheets or things like that. So with deep work and shallow work now categorized, we're now going to put this into a calendar. Obviously with, as a general rule of thumb, having our deep work in our most wakeful hours of the morning, and shallow work in the more lethargic states of the day where we're a bit more depleted. So I can't give specific guidelines for you because everyone's really different. Or maybe if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, I will. But for me, it's usually 2 hours in the morning, followed by a bit of shallow work, and 2 hours in the afternoon, followed by a bit more shallow work. 2. Ritual and Bootstrap sequence. Living like a Zen master is heavily dependent on ritual and of being service to others as a priority. So for this next sequence, we're going to perform an almost sacred ritual before beginning work in order to create an environment for focus, create positive emotion, and set a very specific intention for our work. Now the key with this is we want to make our ritual repeatable and not take up too much time, with the main goal of eliminating distraction and sustaining ourselves without having to move away from our workstation throughout the deep work session. So an example of my ritual is as follows. 1. Fill up my water bottle. 2. Close my door. 3. Phone on airplane mode and put out of sight. 4. Desk cleared of distractions. 5. Study music enabled. 6. Activate One Focus for productivity, which is an application that blocks out access to things like Facebook and all other distracting applications on my computer. The idea is to follow this sequence step by step by step, so you prime the mind to know that it is time to do some serious work. Yours might look a little bit different as well, so don't be afraid to change it up. Now I want you to think back to moments when you've done your best work, and chances are you're probably in a really good mood. So for the next part of our Bootstrap sequence, we're going to generate some positive emotion. Because if we're in a state of stress, our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that is actually responsible for doing this sort of work, doesn't operate nearly as well, which keeps us distracted from doing the things that are actually moving the needle forward in our lives. Now, the good news is, because we already cleared our minds with that mind dump at the start with step 1, and we've also cleared a bit of a space through the beginnings of our ritual, we've already started to generate quite a bit of positive emotion by just creating that clarity and that certainty around what we're going to do for the day. But in the spirit of Zen, I think we can take this a little bit further and do a 1-minute meditation. Simply focusing on the breath coming in, going out, we calm the mind, and this simple practice has the potential to have a huge snowball effect and produce massive results as we settle the mind from thoughts and other distractions. But you could also just give yourself some form of positive affirmation. It doesn't have to be meditation if that doesn't suit you. And just a quick side note, it really does blow my mind that these sorts of techniques aren't taught in places like schools and universities. There's people who are really struggling mentally, who go into study and they're not focusing properly, which is affecting their capacity to make positive impact by producing work that is going to be of service and benefit to other people. Okay, now that we've primed our workspace and we have cultivated some positive emotion, it's time to set a very specific intention for our work. If there's one thing that you take away from this video, let it be that setting an intention is one of the most important things that you can do prior to undergoing work. Like a Zen master who's about to go into a meditation session, setting an intention to not get lost in thought and to return to the breath. So too, we're going to use our intention as an anchor point to keep coming back to whenever we get lost in distraction. Now, the key thing here is to be specific, not something vague like I'm going to do some hard work today. Instead, use something more specific, like in this session, I'm going to work through 2 modules using active recall and take detailed notes. This adds an element of accountability and sets the bar high that you can keep coming back to whenever you get distracted. And lastly, one more thing regarding intention. I think it's important to commit yourself before you start your work to the benefit of yourself and the benefit of all beings, that your work is going to contribute to something higher than you. I feel connecting your work to a higher purpose and really feeling that goes a really long way. It sets you on the right trajectory. You're working towards the benefit of yourself and others, not for materialistic gain or status or anything like that, but you're working towards something that matters. Keeping that on the forefront of your mind can really help, especially with the more mundane tasks, that it's a necessary stepping stone that you have to take in order to be of more service. Okay, now we're really going to channel our inner Zen focus. For this next part, we're going to look at staying on task using meta-awareness, focused on the tasks that actually matter. 3. Meta-awareness and staying on task. So in Zen, there are 2 key principles. Do it completely and do one thing at a time. And to do this well requires a good amount of meta-awareness. Our goal is to punctuate our study sessions with frequent moments of meta-awareness where we're essentially checking to see if we're still on task. This can be done mentally, but when we first begin, it's probably better to use an external system, like using a phone buzzer every 30 minutes. But more than likely, if you're subscribed to this channel, which if you aren't already, now's your chance, and also to like the video. Cheers. You already have an upper hand because you likely have a frequent meditation practice. This is the perfect test to put your mindfulness skills that you've been cultivating into practice and actually really apply them. And when you check in, check to see if you're still on task with the intention that you set. So much like a Zen master who is focusing on his breath in meditation, coming in, going out, and coming back to the breath each time he gets lost in thoughts, the same thing applies to us, except instead of the breath, we're using our intention as the focus object to come back to. We can also use meta-awareness to know when it's appropriate to take breaks. I usually tend to cap my sessions at 2 hours and then take 10-minute breaks if I need to, but if I'm feeling particularly lethargic and it's really affecting my capacity to study, I might use the Pomodoro technique, where I'll do work for 25 minutes followed by a 5-minute break, and repeating the process over and over again. Now, as Zen masters, we should use our breaks wisely, taking walks, doing a brief meditation, making a tea, something restorative, as opposed to scrolling mindlessly through Facebook and Instagram, the bottomless void and pit of distraction. We want to avoid that if we can. Remember, even if you distract yourself for 1 minute through browsing Facebook, it plants seeds in your mind that when you get back to work, you'll notice those distractions flaring up and tempting you to want to kick back. So it's really detracting from your productivity. So be mindful of that when you take your breaks. So to summarize, in part 1, we became energized and alert through a disciplined morning routine and established clarity of our day through a mind dump and scheduling. In part 2, we created an environment for focus and cultivated positive emotion, as well as set a very specific intention for our work, the most important part of this whole process. And in part 3, we learned how to stay on task with meta-awareness and take productive breaks. And every time we go to do our work, we repeat this process, obviously excluding step 1 in the morning routine. And as you can see, this process is systematic. Committing to it will set you far above most people in the world in the way that you use your attention, working deeply to your higher purpose and for the service of yourself and for the service of others. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope this video helps you know how to focus. Go be a hero, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.